They say most people don't recognize the moment their world starts falling apart. It comes disguised, subtle, quiet, even dressed up in laughter and celebration. Looking back, I can tell you the exact moment mine did. It was at a New Year's Eve dinner party of all places. And it wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no kissing caught in a doorway. It was just a look, a whisper, a hand where it didn't belong. That's how it started. We were at our friend Caleb's house, same as every year. It had become a tradition, really. About 20 of us, close friends and plus ones, crammed into his open floor plan apartment with string lights, jazz in the background, and too much wine. Caleb's place always smelled like rosemary and pine, probably because his girlfriend Liz insisted on putting herbs in everything, even the cocktails. I liked it, honestly. Felt like something stable, like something Emma and I could count on every year. That night, Emma looked incredible. I noticed the second she stepped out of the bedroom before we left. She wore this deep green dress I'd never seen before. Tight in the waist, sleeveless, elegant but with just enough edge to turn heads. Her hair was up in that effortless way that probably took her an hour. I smiled, and for a second I felt lucky. Still proud to be the guy standing beside her. "You look amazing," I said. She gave me this tight smile. "Thanks." Just that, nothing more. Not, "You look good too." Or, "I'm excited for tonight." Just thanks. I let it go, not wanting to start the night on a weird note. The drive to Caleb's was mostly silent. Emma scrolled through her phone. I tried making small talk, asked about her day, her sister's upcoming visit, something about the weather, but each answer was short, distracted. I assumed she was tired. Work had been rough on her lately, or so she said. She'd been pulling late hours the past few weeks. A big campaign. End-of-year deadlines. It all made sense. On paper, we arrived a little late. The party was already buzzing. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone shouting from the kitchen about burning the appetizers. As soon as we walked in, people greeted us, hugging Emma, patting me on the back. Caleb handed me a drink, made some joke about finally showing up, and disappeared into the dining room. Emma slipped away almost instantly. I figured she went to find Liz or use the bathroom. I chatted with a few co-workers of Caleb's, nodded along to a conversation about New Year's resolutions, but after a few minutes, I noticed she hadn't come back. I looked around casually. That's when I saw her. She was across the room, standing with her back slightly turned to me, talking to someone, some guy I didn't recognize. He was tall, confident in that effortless kind of way. His hand held a drink low by his hip, and he leaned into the conversation just enough to make it clear they weren't talking about the weather. She was laughing, that laugh she usually reserved for close friends or late-night wine on the couch. Her hand, this is the part one remember most, was resting on his chest, not touching his jacket, not brushing past, resting, lightly, like she belonged there. I froze. Could have meant nothing. Maybe he said something hilarious. Maybe she stumbled and caught herself on him. Maybe I was overthinking. But then I saw her face. There's this look people have when they're totally engaged with someone. Like the rest of the room fades out. That was her face. I watched for maybe 10 seconds before I finally started walking over. And in those 10 seconds, neither of them noticed me. When I reached them, she didn't jump or smile or even acknowledge me at first. It wasn't surprise in her eyes. It was annoyance. Like I had walked into a private moment she didn't want interrupted. "Oh," she said. "There you are. That's it." The guy turned toward me, extending a hand. "Leo," he said. "Friend of Caleb's." I shook it, studying his face. Well-groomed. The kind of guy who probably had opinions on wine pairings and moisturized without being asked. Emma didn't say anything. She just sipped her drink and looked over his shoulder like something more interesting might be happening elsewhere. "You two know each other?" I asked. She gave a quick shrug. "We met earlier." Leo added, "We were just talking about travel. Emma mentioned you two went to Spain last year." I smiled, trying to hold it together. "Yeah, Barcelona. Long days. Great food." Emma didn't say anything. I stood there, part of this awkward triangle, wondering if I was being dramatic for reading too much into this. But the vibe, man, it was off. I've seen Emma talk to strangers. I know how she is. Friendly, warm, but always with boundaries. This wasn't that. This was familiar. Comfortable. Too comfortable. Eventually, someone called Leo from across the room, and he excused himself with a grin. Emma didn't watch him go. Instead, she turned to me and said, "Don't be weird." "What?" "You had that look on your face, like I just committed a crime." I laughed nervously. "I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. That should have been the end of it. A misunderstanding. A weird interaction." But as we sat down for dinner, this long, candlelit table filled with friends and noise and food, I couldn't shake the feeling. Emma sat across from me. Leo sat 2 seats down from her, and they kept glancing at each other. Not constantly, not obviously, just enough. And then it happened again. Right as Liz started telling some story about a road trip disaster, Emma leaned over toward Leo. It was a small lean, like something she didn't want anyone else to notice. I couldn't hear what she said, but she whispered something in his ear. His eyes didn't widen. He didn't react much, just gave a small nod. And then they both laughed under their breath. That was it for me. I didn't say anything, not right then. But the wine in my stomach turned sour. After dinner, I pulled Emma aside while most people were dancing or pouring more drinks. We were in the hallway near the coat closet, just out of *T. "Hey," I said quietly. "What was that about?" "What was what?" "You whispered something to that guy at dinner. Leo. I saw you." She rolled her eyes hard, like I just accused her of robbing a bank. "Seriously?" She scoffed. "You're jealous because I whispered something?" "It looked, I don't know, too personal." She crossed her arms. "Okay, wow. You really have no idea how ridiculous you sound right now. I'm just saying it felt weird. You misunderstood everything. God, Mark, you always do this. You get in your head, build a whole drama around nothing, and then ruin the night with your attitude." She said that part loud enough that I worried someone in the living room might have heard. "I'm not trying to start anything," I said, keeping my voice even. "It just didn't feel right." "Well, maybe your feelings aren't facts," she snapped. That one stung. She'd never used that line on me before. That was something I'd heard her say about other people, about coworkers or family members. It was her way of shutting things down without addressing them. I let it go, told her I needed some air, and went out onto the small balcony. The cold bit at my skin, but I needed the clarity. Inside, I could still hear music and laughter. Emma's laughter, maybe even Leo's. I stood out there for 10 minutes trying to tell myself I was wrong, that I was tired, that she wouldn't do that Emma wasn't that person. But the image of her hand on his chest replayed in my head over and over. After that night, after the party, the whisper, the hand on Leo's chest, I told myself not to overreact. But I did what anyone would do after seeing something that didn't quite fit. I started rewinding. My brain, unwilling to let it go, played detective without my permission. Not frantically, yet, just in the background, like static humming under a quiet song. The next morning, Emma acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee, asked me if I wanted eggs, complained about a headache. When I tried to circle back to the night before, to the whisper, the tone of her voice, the way she shut me down, she dismissed it with a laugh and said, "Oh my God, are we really still doing this?" And just like that, the conversation ended. But something inside me didn't. It stayed, festered, couldn't shake it. It started with small things, tiny details that I had noticed before but never considered worth dwelling on. Like the bottle of cologne I found in our bathroom drawer a few weeks earlier. Expensive, heavy, definitely not mine. It was tucked behind her skincare products. I remembered picking it up, unscrewing the cap, and giving it a cautious sniff. Musky, sharp, not a scent I'd wear, and certainly not one she'd buy for me. I didn't even use cologne. When I asked her about it back then, she blinked once and said, "Oh, that came with a set I ordered online. Gift box thing. Free sample or whatever." Then she changed the subject to dinner plans. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Now, I wasn't so sure. There was also the charger. Some random white phone charger plugged into the wall on her side of the bed. It wasn't ours. We both had the same model, same brand, and neither of us had bought a new one in ages. I remember noticing it because it was slightly scuffed, like it had been pulled out of a backpack one too many times. When I asked, Emma said she borrowed it from a coworker. Left mine at the office, she said, casual. I'll give it back tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went. The charger stayed. Things like that I once would have brushed off, now made my stomach tighten. I began looking for patterns, and once I started, I couldn't stop. She worked late. A lot. Emma had always been ambitious, and her field, marketing, was known for its chaos. But in the past couple months, her late nights had nearly tripled. Sometimes she wouldn't get home until 10 p.m. Exhausted and irritated, dropping her bag by the door and brushing off any attempt at conversation. I'm just drained, she'd say, unzipping her boots and heading straight for the shower. Can we not talk tonight? Or worse. She'd come home in a strangely upbeat mood. Bubbly. Chatty. Like she'd had just enough wine to loosen her words but not enough to slur them. When I asked how work had been on those nights, she'd say, "Oh, it was fine," and pivot to something else. A new Netflix show. A recipe she wanted to try. A random story about a friend from yoga. The one thing she never did was mention names. Specific people. That was new. Emma used to tell me everything, who annoyed her at the office, who got a promotion, who made a fool of themselves during a pitch. She'd talk and talk and talk. Now it was all vague. A coworker. Someone on the team. The guy from upstairs. Even Leo. She never said his name again. One night, when she was in the shower, I walked past her phone sitting on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't even pick it up. But the screen was lit. An Instagram notification. A heart emoji. A username I didn't recognize. I Googled it later. It was private. No profile picture. That was the first time I felt shame twist up with suspicion. Like I'd already crossed some invisible line by checking. Even though I didn't open anything, didn't dig. Just looked. But it felt dirty. Still, I couldn't stop. A few days later, I remembered something else. Months ago, Emma had asked me to help her transfer photos from her phone to her laptop. She wanted to make room for a vacation we were planning. I remembered scrolling through her photo library with her by my side, checking off which ones to save and which to delete. But there were photos in there, ones I hadn't noticed until now, that weren't taken in our house. Different kitchen, different living room, a small tan couch I'd never seen, a dark gray countertop with a wine rack in the corner, a throw blanket I didn't recognize. Nothing explicit, just subtle differences. One picture showed her in leggings and a hoodie, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine. Half of a man's arm was visible, just the elbow and the corner of a sleeve. But it wasn't mine. I'd seen that photo back then. I didn't ask about it. She said it was from Liz's place. I had no reason to doubt her. Now, I remembered the color of Liz's couch, blue, not tan. I remembered the wine rack. Ours was a vertical tower. This one was wall-mounted. I remembered the arm. I remembered not asking. And now it felt like all these little things, like scattered puzzle pieces, had started aligning. One after another. One at a time. I started watching Emma more closely. When we were on the couch, she'd check her phone and tilt the screen slightly away from me. Not every time, but often enough. When I asked who she was texting, she'd say work, or Liz, or no one. And then the conversation would die. She stopped asking me about my day. She stopped making breakfast on Sundays. She stopped falling asleep beside me and started going to bed later, after I'd already passed out. And when I kissed her, it felt like kissing someone distracted. Like her mind was elsewhere. There was one night, I don't even remember what triggered it, when I asked her straight up, "Is there something going on?" She looked at me, brows furrowed. "Like what? Are you seeing someone?" She laughed. Not a full laugh. A scoff. "What? No," she said. "Jesus, Mark. Where is this coming from?" I told her it was just a feeling. that I couldn't shake it. She rolled her eyes, like I was being dramatic. "Nothing's going on," she said. "I'm just stressed. You always jump to the worst conclusions. You've got to stop that." I nodded, apologized, but something inside me broke a little. Because her eyes, when she said that, didn't meet mine. She looked to the side, just for a second. But it was enough. That night, I sat in my car after she fell asleep. It was cold out and I didn't turn on the heat. I sat there with my hands in my lap, replaying conversations, reliving scenes, asking myself where it all started. The truth? I think I'd known for a while. Not consciously, not loudly, but in that deep, quiet place where truths hide until they're ready to break the surface. You know what I remembered? 2 months earlier, I found a receipt folded into a book she'd left on the kitchen table. A perfume boutique, not her usual brand, not even her style. I'd made a joke, secret admirer, and she had laughed it off. Now I remembered that laugh, too quick. Now I remembered her locking her phone more. Now I remembered how she'd flinch slightly when I hugged her from behind. All those things I had explained away, excused. I hadn't wanted to see it. I hadn't wanted to believe it. But now I was beginning to, and once that door opened, even just a crack, it didn't close again. There's a difference between suspicion and confirmation. Suspicion feels like drowning in fog. You see shapes, you hear things, but nothing is solid. You doubt your memory. You gaslight yourself. You ask questions and get half-truths, and you tell yourself you're paranoid. Because once you know, once the truth is undeniable, there's no more pretending. And I think, deep down, that's what I feared most. But you can't live in fog forever. Eventually, the light cuts through. And when it did, it didn't just blind me. It burned. It started with a receipt. Not a dramatic one. No hotel bill or S*XY red lingerie. Just another receipt, crumpled in the passenger door pocket of Emma's car. I found it while looking for her sunglasses. The receipt was from an online store, one of those boutique fragrance sites. A brand I didn't recognize, but the item caught my attention instantly. Would Ember pour, 3 ounces men's cologne? Again, I knew it wasn't mine. I hadn't worn cologne since my 20s, and Emma used to joke that I smelled like wood and coffee naturally. There was no reason for her to buy that, unless it was for someone else. I thought back to the bottle I found weeks ago in our bathroom drawer, the one she claimed came as a free sample. The scent matched. I remembered it too well. Sharp, clean, almost like citrus and burnt leather. That receipt alone wouldn't prove anything. But then I looked closer. It wasn't just one order. It was a shipping summary showing multiple purchases. Same cologne, same size, sent to 3 different addresses. One was ours. Another was a P.O. box I didn't recognize. And the third was to a street name that looked painfully familiar. I opened my laptop, punched it into Google Maps, and when the image loaded, I felt my chest tighten. I knew that driveway. It was Leo's. I'd never been to his house, but I'd seen him park his car on that exact corner when we left Caleb's party a few months back. He waved goodbye to Emma, too familiar, and walked to that very porch. I didn't think anything of it at the time, just another guest heading home. But now I saw everything differently. I clicked through his property on satellite view, then street view. Same house, same mailbox, same fence. Emma had shipped cologne to him. Why? What possible explanation was there? I closed the laptop, sat back, and just stared at the ceiling. That was the first real moment I felt the floor start to split beneath me. Still, I didn't confront her. I told myself I needed more. The receipt could be a gift. The address could be a coincidence. I could hear her voice in my head already, dismissing everything, turning it back on me. "Are you stalking my packages now?" So I waited, watched. 2 days later, she said she was working late. Again. I said nothing, just nodded. "Okay, don't work too hard." At 8:27 p.m. I got in my car and drove. Not to her office, not to any restaurant. I drove straight to the address from the shipping summary. Leo's house. It was in a quieter part of town, the kind of neighborhood with wider streets and old trees that made the sidewalks buckle. I parked 3 houses down, turned off my lights, and waited. I felt like a criminal, like a stalker, like someone I didn't recognize. But I also felt alive for the first time in weeks. At 8:42 p.m., a silver Honda pulled into the driveway. Emma's car. I felt my breath catch. My hand gripped the steering wheel so tightly it hurt. She didn't park on the street like someone just visiting. She pulled into the driveway like she'd done it before, like she belonged. The front door opened. Leo came out. He was wearing sweatpants. Sweatpants. They hugged for a long time. Not one of those quick, stiff hugs people give to acquaintances. This one had gravity, like they were pulling each other into something safe. Then they went inside, and the door closed. I sat there for 45 minutes. At one point, I saw lights flicker in the upstairs window. A silhouette moved. Couldn't tell who. Maybe it was her. Maybe him. But the longer I sat there, the more the question faded from if to how long. When I finally drove home, my hands were still shaking. She came back after midnight. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. She walked in quietly, took off her shoes and said, "You're up late." "Couldn't sleep," I said. She nodded, started walking past me. Then I noticed it. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I blinked once, twice. "Did you lose your ring?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She paused. "What?" "Your wedding ring. It's not on your hand." She looked down like she just noticed. "Oh, no. I took it off at work. It was bugging me. I was typing all day." I stared at her. "You left it at the office?" "Yeah." I didn't say anything. She walked upstairs, and I sat there in silence. My ears buzzed with static. My stomach churned. I could still smell the faint trail of that cologne as she passed me on the stairs. The same cologne I'd found in our house. The same one she shipped to Leo. The same one she smelled like now. There was no fog left. This wasn't suspicion. This was confirmation. The next morning, she was up early, dressed for work, moving around the kitchen like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, told me to have a good day. I didn't kiss her back. After she left, I went to the closet and pulled out the small fireproof safe where we kept paperwork. Passports, marriage license, car titles. I took out our wedding photos, just sat on the floor and looked at them. Her smile, her dress, the way her hand rested on my chest. And all I could think was, how long had that been a lie? That night, I didn't say anything either. Or the next. I was collecting data. One evening, I called the cologne company and pretended to be a customer who lost access to an order history. With the order number from the receipt, I asked if they could verify where it was delivered. The rep said, "Sure. I see 3 separate addresses here. Do you want me to read them out?" I said yes. She did. The third one again matched Leo's. "Do you know the name on that order?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "It was Emma Holloway. No excuses. No cover story. My wife had shipped a luxury cologne to another man's home. Under her real name. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while Emma's breathing settled into its familiar rhythm beside me. I kept expecting to feel rage. But all I felt was hollow. Like she'd reached inside me, scooped something out, and replaced it with silence. I watched her sleep and wondered how many nights she'd closed her eyes next to me while carrying someone else's scent on her skin. And that thought, that's what finally broke me. Not the cologne. Not the missing ring. Not the whispers at the party. It was the quiet, the routine, the fact that she could live in our life under our roof and still lie so well. The funny thing about discovering betrayal is that even when you have all the proof, you still hesitate. You think there's going to be this big moment, a confrontation, a confession, a breakdown, maybe even some kind of cinematic apology, but real life doesn't work that way. It's messier, quieter. You wait for the perfect time to bring it up, and then realize there is no perfect time to tell your wife you know she's been sleeping with someone else. But eventually, it just spills out. For me, it was a Tuesday. Cold. Gray. She was in the kitchen pouring almond milk into her coffee, talking about some email thread at work. I don't even know what made me say it right then. It just happened. How long have you been sleeping with him? The sound of milk splashing into the mug stopped. Her hand froze mid-pour. She didn't turn around immediately. What? You heard me. She finally turned to face me, her expression unreadable. Not shocked. Not scared. Just neutral. What are you talking about? She said. Leo, I replied. The cologne. The addresses. Your ring. Your car outside his house last week. Do you really want me to keep going? She set the milk carton down slowly, crossed her arms. That's not what you think. That sentence, the classic line. The script. It's not what you think. It was almost laughable. But her tone was so cold, so disinterested, that it didn't feel like a defense. Felt like a formality. Then what is it, Emma? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for months. Like you've been building a second life while I've been here holding up the one we actually built together. She leaned against the counter, let out a long sigh and said, You always do this. I blinked. Do what? Jump to conclusions. Spiral. Get obsessed. You start collecting details and inventing stories in your head, and then you think you've figured out the truth. Emma, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I saw you walk into his house. I saw you come home without your ring, smelling like his cologne. You bought him gifts. You lied about where you were. I have receipts. I have everything. She didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she grabbed her mug, took a sip and said, So what now? You want me to apologize? That was when I knew. Not just that she'd done it, I already knew that, but that she didn't care. There was no panic, no remorse, no breakdown, just resignation, like she was done pretending, like this whole situation was just mildly inconvenient. Like I'd ruined her morning routine by finally catching up to what she'd already accepted. I couldn't breathe for a moment. It felt like all the oxygen had been drained from the room. You're not even going to try to fix this? I asked. She looked at me, finally really looked, and what I saw wasn't guilt. It was tiredness. The kind of tired that doesn't come from a long day, but from being done. What is there to fix? She said. That hit harder than anything else. Harder than the lies, the scent of another man's cologne, the late nights, the whispered conversations. What is there to fix? You cheated on me, I said. You broke our marriage. And you broke it long before I did. She snapped back. Don't pretend this just happened in a vacuum. You've been emotionally distant for years. You don't listen. You check out. I felt alone in this house for longer than I can remember. So that justifies this? I gestured wildly. Sneaking around behind my back? Starting a relationship with someone else instead of talking to me? She didn't answer. Just drank her coffee. Say something, Emma. Anything. You want me to say I'm sorry? She asked. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I'm sorry things got to this point. But I'm not sorry for wanting more than whatever this has become. She waved her hand vaguely around the kitchen. So you've just decided, I said, laughing bitterly. That's it. You gave up. You made that choice for both of us. I didn't make any choice for you, she replied. You made your choices. I made mine. You could have left, I said. You could have told me it wasn't working. You could have had the decency to be honest. Her voice hardened. Oh, and what would you have done, Mark? You'd have begged me to stay. You'd have guilt me. You'd have said all the right things, made promises you wouldn't keep. And then nothing would have changed. I stared at her, stunned. You don't know that. Don't I? I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to punch the wall or flip the kitchen table. But instead, I just stood there, swallowing all of it. The hurt, the disbelief, the shame. You've really been planning this, haven't you? I said quietly. She looked away. Little by little, you pulled back. You stopped talking. You started working late. You hid things. And the whole time I was trying to fix us. I was fighting for this marriage while you were already on your way out. Her silence said more than anything else she could have said. How long? I asked. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. Almost a year. I felt the room spin. I braced myself against the kitchen island, trying to stay upright. You've been cheating on me for almost a year? She nodded. And you didn't think I deserved to know? I didn't want to blow everything up before I knew what I wanted, she said, as if that were a reasonable justification. But you did blow it up, I said. You just made sure I wasn't looking when you lit the fuse. She said nothing. Did you love him? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know. That told me everything I needed to know. The conversation ended there. She grabbed her bag, said she was going to work, and walked out like it was any other Tuesday, like we hadn't just thrown the remains of our marriage on the floor and stepped over the pieces. I didn't move for a long time. I just stood there, staring at the door she'd walked through, thinking how final it all felt. Later that night, she didn't come home. No explanation, no text, just absence. And for the first time, I didn't ask where she was. I didn't call. I didn't care. Because that morning, the moment she looked me in the eye and asked what there was to fix, that was the moment I realized the woman I married no longer existed. The next morning, the house felt emptier than I'd ever known it. It wasn't just that Emma didn't come home the night before. It was that something had shifted in the air, like the very structure of our life had tilted ever so slightly. I could feel it in the walls, in the silence, in the way the light came through the blinds just a little too bright, too harsh. I got out of bed and walked through the house like a stranger. The kitchen looked the same. The shoes by the door hadn't moved. Her coat still hung from the hallway hook. But it was all a mirage. Because something was missing, even if I couldn't put my finger on it yet. That was the beginning. The beginning of watching her leave piece by piece. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable, like the things you don't realize are gone until weeks later when you need them. A framed picture from our anniversary trip to Oregon just disappeared from the shelf in the bedroom. I stared at the blank space for a solid minute before realizing what had been there. When I asked about it later, she said she was reorganizing. Then her favorite mug vanished from the kitchen cabinet. The one with the chipped handle and the words "Plant Lady" written across it. I opened the cabinet one morning out of habit and saw its absence like a missing tooth. Another day, I noticed her red heels were gone from the shoe rack. The ones she used to complain hurt her feet but never stopped wearing anyway. The whole top row looked thinner, like something had been skimmed off the surface. And her jewelry box? It used to sit open on the dresser, spilling with tangled necklaces and mismatched earrings. Now it was shut tight, polished, too neat, like it had been emptied and closed just for show. I started paying closer attention after that. One night she came home late again and went straight to the bedroom. I waited a few minutes, then followed. The closet door was open, the light inside casting a soft glow across the carpet. She was standing there with her back to me, sliding a dress into a garment bag. Going somewhere? I asked, voice casual. She flinched, just barely, then turned and smiled like I was a guest who had caught her mid-packing for vacation. I'm just moving some stuff around, she said, trying to make more room. For what? I asked. She didn't answer, just zipped the garment bag slowly, like that sound could explain everything. That was the night I knew. She wasn't just cheating. She was preparing to leave. And not in a messy, impulsive way. She was organizing it, planning it, packing strategically so I wouldn't notice. Removing traces of herself from our shared life the way you'd peel wallpaper. Carefully, corner by corner, until the walls are blank again. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Her bathroom drawer, once overflowing with makeup, was now strangely sparse. Her favorite lipstick was gone. So was the perfume she wore on special occasions. Her journal had vanished from the nightstand. Even her hair straightener, the one that was always plugged in and left dangerously close to the sink, was suddenly nowhere to be found. And her laptop, once left casually open on the couch or coffee table, was now always tucked into her bag. Password locked. Off limits. I checked the laundry one evening. Just stood there staring at the washer, realizing I hadn't seen any of her clothes in there for weeks. It was all mine, socks, boxers, shirts I barely remembered wearing. Her stuff must have been washed elsewhere, or never dirted at all, because she wasn't living here, not fully. She was transitioning, floating between lives. I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. I went through the motions, made dinner for both of us, even though she rarely came home to eat it, tidied the living room, took out the trash, watched our shows alone, pausing at the parts where she used to laugh. But I was a stand-in for a husband she'd already left. The final blow came the night I found the drawer. She'd been acting especially distant that week, texting constantly, stepping outside to take calls, coming home late and going straight to bed without so much as a good night. I told myself I wouldn't snoop, that if she wanted to leave, she would. I wouldn't chase. I wouldn't beg. But curiosity doesn't wait for permission. One night, after she fell asleep in the guest room, yes, she'd moved into the guest room for space, I walked into our shared bedroom. Something about the energy in the room felt off, like it had been cleaned by someone trying to hide something. I opened the nightstand drawer on her side. Inside was a small folder, brown and thin, labeled with her handwriting. Personal. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that, but I did. Inside were documents, a copy of her birth certificate, an old passport, printed resume, a blank lease application, and then, at the bottom, a to-do list, written on one of those pastel sticky notes she always kept in her bag. Call realtor, forward mail, cancel gym membership hours, update banking info, new address, new address. I sat on the edge of the bed, that sticky note in my hand, reading it over and over. She hadn't just cheated. She had been constructing her exit. She had planned it, quietly, coldly, like a business decision. Like ending our marriage was just another item on her agenda for the week. When I confronted her about it the next morning, she didn't even try to deny it. She just stared at me and said, "I didn't think you'd find that. Not I'm sorry. Not let's talk about it. Not this isn't what it looks like. Just, I didn't think you'd find that." That was all I needed to hear. After that, I stopped asking questions. I stopped trying to talk. I stopped cooking for two. I stopped checking the time when she didn't come home. I let the silence stretch between us until it filled every corner of the house. She still lived there, technically, but emotionally, she was already gone. One night, I heard her on the phone in the hallway, whispering, laughing softly, the same tone she used with Leo at that party on New Year's Eve. I didn't move, didn't ask, didn't care, because now I knew I wasn't losing a wife. I was shedding a stranger who'd been sharing my life under false pretenses. I was watching someone carefully and methodically cut ties, clear space, and step into a life I hadn't been invited to be part of. And it didn't matter anymore if she was leaving for him or for herself. The point was, she was already gone, and I was done pretending she wasn't. I didn't announce anything. No arguments, no goodbyes. One morning, I just left. I packed a small bag, took my keys, and vanished. No note, no explanation. I turned off my phone, deleted social apps, and booked a quiet Airbnb 2 hours away. For the first time in months, I could hear myself think. The silence was mine again. And while she was still home, still preparing her escape, she noticed. I saw the first missed calls in my email inbox days later. A few angry, a few panicked. But I didn't reply. I watched from a distance, digitally, emotionally, as her confidence crumbled into worry. I wasn't where she left me, waiting to be chosen or forgiven. I had removed myself from her equation completely, and that, more than any confrontation, spoke louder than words ever could. Time passed, and the truth settled. I hadn't lost a wife. I'd lost an illusion. Emma had been gone long before she walked out. The betrayal hurt, but the clarity healed. I rebuilt quietly, cut ties, moved forward. No revenge, no drama, just distance. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing again. I let the pain burn through me, and when it was done, there was only peace. And the moment that haunted me most, the whisper at that New Year's table, the one she thought I couldn't hear, that was the last time I ever second-guessed myself. It became the crack where all the light came in. After that, I never looked back.